In this video, we're going to do a couple of examples on completing the square in order to solve a quadratic equation. We've already done a couple to develop the process and to examine what work needs to be shown and the organization that goes into it. So let's apply it in these examples. So we have our quadratic, x squared plus 12x equals negative 41. Remember, the whole idea first is make sure your quadratic and linear term are isolated by themselves. They are the constants over on the other side, so we're set. Now you put your placeholders in, x squared plus 12x. We're going to find our c value. So I'm going to put my placeholder in, and I have to put it on the other side as well to keep the equation balanced. And now what we do is we take half our linear term, which is a positive 12, give myself some work room. So I'm going to take half of 12, which is 6, and I am going to square that number, which gives me 36. This is the c value that goes on both sides, the 36. And now we find the binomial that when squared would yield this trinomial. We look for the perfect square, and that's where our work comes in. You know, what squared would give me x, and that would be x. You know, I have a 36 here, and I squared a positive 6. And so I use a plus sign since I squared a positive, and I'm going to fix that plus sign. We squared a positive 6, so we're going to do plus 6. And then just do the math on the other side. Negative 41 plus 36 is a negative 5. Now we have our perfect square. The x we want to solve for, but it's protected by these parentheses. But that parentheses is being squared right now, so I can actually undo the squared operation. If I do it to the left side, I have to do it to the right side. And that leaves me with my x plus 6. And as always, remember, since you're square rooting, you're going to deal with the plus or minus. And you simplify. If I have the square root of negative 5, you take that negative out, turn it into an I, leave the 5 inside because you can't factor that down anymore. Can't simplify that down. And then we have to solve from there. We want to get the x by itself. So we're going to subtract 6. If I subtract 6, that makes it negative on the right side. Put it in front of the plus or minus I radical 5. And that is your answer. The idea of completing the square, the process, is not too difficult if you organize your work. Students who usually struggle with this concept try and skip some important steps, try not to show all the work from it, to try and jump right down to this area, and it doesn't work. There's a big gap in material that's missing, big gap in concepts that are there. So make sure, I mean, this is, the minimum required work that needs to be shown to show the understanding and develop the understanding of completing the square. So let's try it one more time. And I'm going to, on this one, I'm going to get rid of these steps on the right side so we can just have a good clean workspace and just focus on the problem as if it was on the test. Same idea as before. We want to make sure our quadratic and linear term are isolated. They are by themselves. And right now it's not. Right now I have a negative 11 there. So I'm going to get rid of this negative 11 to the other side by adding it. So that gives me x squared minus 10x equals 11. Now that the quadratic and linear term are by themselves, I can complete the square. So I'm going to insert my placeholder for the c value on the left side. And to keep the equation balanced, I'm going to insert the placeholder on the right side as well. And now we complete the square. We take half our linear term, which is negative 10. So we take half of negative 10, which gives me negative 5. And we square that resulting number, which gives me 25. So the 25 is what I put on both ends and both placeholders. And now I factor this down into the binomial squared that would yield this trinomial. So x would give me the x squared, and I squared a negative 5. And so a minus 5 goes inside the parentheses. And on the right side, 11 plus 25 is 36. To solve for x, it's protected in the parentheses and being squared, so we're going to cancel out that squared. That will get rid of the parentheses for us and that exponent. If I do it to the left side, I have to do it to the right side. So I'm left with x minus 5. Since we are square rooting and solving for x, we need to work with the positive and the negative number. So the square root of 36 is 6. And so then to solve for x, to get it by itself, we need to get rid of this negative 5, this minus 5. So I would add it, which makes it a positive on the other side. So you have a positive 5 plus or minus 6. So there's going to be two answers here. The first, where it's 5 plus 6, which is 11. And the second, where it's 5 minus 6, which is negative 1. And so x equals negative 1 or 11. So I hope you feel confident with how to complete the square. So far we've done 4 examples. Go back through and I want you to look at the examples and notice the process, the work that's being shown, the organization. Now there's one more problem we're going to examine on completing the square in the next video. It's a little more difficult, so make sure you are confident with all these steps before moving on.